Phap Dung, welcome back to the mountain from your travels. We were there with you, and we sent our A-team, you and Phap Lin, to COP26, and we're so thrilled with everything you've brought back to us. And one of the questions that I've had, and we were sitting in the circle garden, and someone came up and said, this is what I really want to ask him. So I'll ask this for everybody. We know how your presence changes us, any audience you're with, or, I want to talk to you about your presence at COP, but how did being there change you? How did being at COP26 impact you?
Yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity because we were able to be in an environment that is beyond our circle. It's really high-end kind of, really, we call it strung up people doing important things. I think they were doing, and it's just a really high level. It's kind of like we were at Dreamforce as well, which is also for business, a business conference. And so when this one is like international, governmental, and it was around climate and our situation, but it was people who were vested in organizing society. But what was special about this one was that I got to learn that actually in each one's heart they all care. They all want to make things better, so we were able to touch that. And of course, some are like trying to sneak out of things because they're having to survive, I guess, or to delay or transition as best as they can based on money and so on. But most of the people there, they had a passion and an activist role in protecting the environment, being a voice for the unrepresented, whether it's people or minerals or animals. And we got to touch that deeply, participating in many meetings and many hearing their personal story. So that was a real privilege for me to be able to enter that space. So that's what I can probably make that up, but now it's full of experiences of hearing people's story, why they are an activist, why they're fighting for this cause, why are they bringing this issue from whatever groups they're from, And so for me, I think that really has helped me to have more patience, but be still, I'm still, also supporting that energy of let's move, let's not wait, as well. But it's kind of like when to be patient and when to find the opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think I learned a little bit more about the difficulty that's facing them, because they're so strong. You see? So it's like they're trying to make the negotiation, trying to talk, trying to give and take, but everybody's so strung up that it's hard to do any of that.
You said everybody's at their limit. I mean, it just feels like that.
Oh my God.
It's interesting you said that about everyone at COP26, because that's how it feels like to me, doing the work that I'm doing every day. Everyone is just up to here, and not only are they full of everything they're doing, they're full of the emotions about what if I fail, what if this doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so that was it was really wonderful to. I wanted to say too, what was it like being. Like when I watched the video of you with the New York Times moniker in the back of, and the New York Times at the tree place.
Yeah.
And my husband and I were laughing because I think we remember your first Dharma talk ever. It was a retreat here, and there's 1,000 people there, and Ty says, come up here, and you had to go up and sit down. He says, give a Dharma talk. And we laugh all the time because we remember you said, I'm going back to my breathing. My palms are sweaty. My heart is racing. But I saw you sitting there with the New York Times right in back of your head, and just the solidity that you projected. And I said, that is a mountain in the middle of an ocean of stress and all of that. So what was it like to be able to be so solid in what could not have been a very solid environment? Because a lot of us are in not very solid environments.
Yeah, it is actually, I was aware of that, and it really helps to have my brother there, Phap Dung. So everything we did, we were there. Or if it's just me in the stage, he's down there, and we are like in eye contact. So to have that kind of like solidity of brotherhood, that we got each other's back, and we know why we're there. And so that actually, we keep reminding each other. Every time the day is in, we come back home and we go through the day. And so we nourish ourselves of all the magic and miracles. So that connection is very hopeful that you have, and we nourish each other. We're not like on each other about negative and complaining. So we're taking care of each other. And I think that's the trip made it, whatever you felt, it was not just me, it was just us, as well as us feeling the community. When we walk, when we're sitting up there, we know we are the voice of our community, of Thai, of this tradition. So it's just very easy to actually, not easy, it's just, you feel that energy.
I love when Phap Dung said, I'm a mycelial fruit coming up.
Yeah.
I'm a mycelial fruit too. I'm coming up out of the earth.
Exactly.
That image, I think, will stay with me forever.
Yeah, that was the image we used for the whole trip.
Yeah.
That we don't need to be protest activists and like uprise. We are mycelial. We like underneath, and I swear all magical thing happen when you believe that underneath all this like, negotiation back and forth. It's a network that connects us all. And I really feel that everyone knows what kindness is. Everyone has shared once in their life. Everyone was a child, so we don't lose. So we have to see beyond them, you see. So you don't have enemies and you don't have to confront. So when we that's the mycelial metaphor, that underneath, and in fact, it's biological. Our brains, ancestry is mycelial. If you get into the mushroom guy, he's my hero too. But that was a theme for our whole trip.
Well, one of the things that, in my experience, being engaged on this stuff is that, and one of the things I deeply believe is about not choosing sides. And Ty is like the most beautiful example of that. He didn't choose sides in the hardest scenario ever, to not choose sides. But people get really mad at you when you don't choose sides, especially if you don't choose their side. And so I wonder if, I've always felt like, well, even if you choose sides, then you've kind of shut off conversation. But everybody has, no matter, like you were saying, everybody, no matter who you are, has something in common. And so I'm just wondering if you had new insights because there are people that disagree at COP26.
Yeah.
And so, what insights do you have on how we can still forge a path when there's deep differences in how people view what's going on?
Yeah.
And how can we work together even if we don't agree?
Yeah, that's, everybody's in their process in a certain part of the path. Everybody's in the, part of the ripening. So I don't expect people to have that if they don't have it. But for me, when I get frustrated or I have moments of like recognizing that there's this, person that it's really hard, you can see that they're doing it out of ignorance. And I this is something it was unfortunate. I didn't have a place to share. It just didn't have it. But I come back to holding my hand and remind myself Thai's teaching, the story of the hammer, the right hand holding the hammer and then accidentally hitting while he's nailing something on the wall, and he hits the finger, right? And then, it immediately grabs the left hand, right? And, I many times Thai would share that. And sometimes Thai would say, it's like, the left hand is like, oh, now you harm me, please give me the hammer, right? Or like, it's like, oh, you remember I helped you, Okay, so next time you better repay me, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, or like, you know, the finger kind of actually taking the hammer and hitting the right hand back. And, you know, that image for me holding like that, how ridiculous it is if my left hand actually did it.
Yeah.
So that's for me, yes, the right hand did it. You know, and sometimes it looks like it's out of hate, out of ill, you know, intention, out of greed, out of whatever that is. It's because the hand doesn't know, you see. So it's the ignorance, you know, the anger, the misperception that caused this. So for me, even if that is out of ignorance, and that, would it make sense for me to have the same ignorance and hit the right hand back? So anyway, I come back to that contemplation. It's hard when you're dealing with daily, you know, day stuff, especially around these political issues and really dire issues.
And issues that people care, you know, so much about. And what you're describing is that a lot of what I see going on is that there's like the politics of grievance or the actual, you know, of revenge. It's like revenge politics and grievance and all of this. And it's just having the practice be able to find a way to move beyond, yes, you did that. Yes, you hammered my thumb. How can we move forward together? And just, I think, I'm hoping there's power in just laying out, here, let me, you know, let's try to find a path forward that doesn't require us being for or against each other.
Yeah, and it's difficult. That's why I don't demand that from others.
Yeah,
I just tell you how I practice when I'm in front of that. Because I have it too.
Yeah.
I also get, God, I can't believe they're doing this, you know?
How could you do that?
And I have to come back, you know? And it's not, we're humans, man. So I don't expect people to do that, you know? But one thing I wanted to share, like, you know, business people, they're so busy planning for the future and to, you know, get more whatever, to get more rich and whatever. They're so busy doing that they burn out, right?
Yep.
Politicians, activists. Politician, fame, power. Activists, cause. They become the victim of the cause. You see, so everybody is passionate, but they sacrifice the present moment, sacrifice caring for themselves, sacrificing nourishing themselves, inspiring themselves, you know, bringing joy as well. It's like almost they feel guilty if they did it. That's what I sometimes feel. And at this place, that's what I see lacking, is also enjoying the wonders, you know. So, you know what I'm saying? They're like Buddha gave teachings to politicians, to business people. And I see even activists, even for great noble causes, you can become a victim of that.
And you can make things worse. And I love today when we were talking about what's the fuel. Is anger a good fuel? Is it a sustainable fuel? We're all into sustainability. Anger is not a sustainable resource. Love,
that's right,
is a sustainable energy source.
Yeah.
And so what I really love that, you know, let's look at what's driving our activism, because, you know, anger is almost nuclear fuel, and it can just make things a lot worse than you anticipated.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, an important thing for us who are still working this to do, is try not to act out of anger.
Yeah, there's different. There's I use the compassion. There's firm compassion and soft compassion. So that for me, but they're both compassion. So you move and you're fierce, you're strong, but it's not out of hate or separation, you see? So compassion comes knowing that our common mutual suffering, that we're in this together. I was harmed, that person harmed, but we are of the same, nature, of the same body. So for me, I'm sometimes harsh, strong as well, but I look back and I see it is, and Thai has been too, our teacher.
Yeah.
So he's not all nurturing and peppy, he will give you medicine that's harsh. And sometimes governments or politicians, if you're in the right place, sometimes you need to also do that.
Well, they need a strong teaching. That's the one thing I love from
No,
practice too.
Yeah.
So there's a sweet, nice teachings, and then there's strong teachings.
But
sometimes you need that.
Yeah, when you give that output, there's a cost to your body.
Yeah.
You see, so you have to also know how to take care of yourself to replenish, because or else you will get sick.
Yep.
And so there is a cost to that.
And I loved when you said, for every action or everything you buy, something, some animal, some person, some worker, something is paying a price for that. So
that's the new economy.
Yeah.
The economy we established, that we constructed, is
There's
a little
no
bit based
nothing.
on illusion,
Yeah.
a kind of illusion,
No free
ignorance.
nothing.
Yeah, what someone actually said, that all the goods that we thought we were, every time we produce goods, there's bads somewhere. It's just, you haven't looked
A new
deeply
balance
enough.
sheet of goods and
Isn't it
bads.
great?
Yeah,
It's like, for me, it's not just about emission. It's about like taking livelihood as well, or like the value of something. That's the way forward, and that in terms of exploitation is huge. And I hear a lot of creative things coming out in terms of money, balancing money, so that rich folks going to other in tourism, that has to be considered, because that's a cost. Yeah.
I said, go, yeah, when you were talking about the issue of a diet came up, and you said instead of talking about maybe we shouldn't eat as many cows, let's just feed them differently. And it's that kind of disconnect that is shocking. It's just shocking.
That's where I have to say, okay, left hand, right hand.
Yes, exactly.
You see, I have moments like that.
Like, really? We're talking about what we're feeding them? About what? But I mean, at least it came up. I mean, the issue of diet came up. I think that's, you got to say it's progress.
Yeah.
But so I was going to ask you, was there much discussion about diet other than that, or?
We didn't go in the areas. We didn't have that much time to explore the different presentation. But I believe, they were. It's up there as a, one of the major segment. So, but Phap Dung and I our days were pretty full, so we didn't attend any presentation. So I couldn't tell you. I would probably have to look back.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's up there right now in terms of the second sector of human activity that creates emission high. I think it's like 25%, pretty high.
Yeah, very high.
Yeah.
The other thing I was really touched by is, well, when you said you were a resistor, and I think there's like a way people understand resistance, but your way of resistance is wonderful. I'm resisting, and I can just think of, I'm resisting the desire to demonize somebody. I'm resisting my habit to do this or that. Yeah. So there's a lot of fertile ground in what do I need to resist.
Yeah.
That is a kind of habituated response. And I think in the activist community there are lots of habituated responses that need to be resisted. And I love too when someone said something about just having compassion or loving somebody doesn't mean you condone anything they've done.
Right.
I think it's so much wound up is, do we have to hate people or object to behaviors they may be exhibiting, or oppose an action, not the person? And there seems to be a lot of practice room in there between what is it we're objecting to, how are we objecting, how are we resisting, how are we blocking things that should not happen, but what's the fuel we're using to energize that?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of rich ground in that.
Yeah, it's just a reframing. Of course, there's certain things that we need to resist in terms of confronting, like the oil industry or the fracking industry. We need to block roads. You need to put your body in the line. That's also in the tradition of Buddhism as well, to bring awareness because of the nonviolent action, direct, and finding skillful means to do that, and to do that with, that kind of care and love, So there's some space for that, you know. But here, you know, yeah, it's actually at this conference where I kind of, because of the questions and the framing of us as being religious leaders or like but I was part of this Talanari dialogue, which is from the Fiji tradition, from Ireland. It's a way of sharing with each other how we're impacted and why we're doing what we're doing. An activist, a minister from Ireland, the sustainable officer of Ford company. So the Talanari dialogue was that you have to share your story personally. What was the moment that moves you to act and be involved with what you are in now? Wow, I heard from like 10 different people, from youth activists, from Holland, from one from Africa, I forget their names, I'm sorry, but minister of Ireland, and the part of the Ford.
And everybody knew their moment too, didn't they?
And they shared it.
Wow.
It was so, and so I had to reflect, because they told us that's what so it's basically, my question is like, in terms of climate situation, why are you a monk? It's cool, huh? So I had to reflect about my past and how I was, you know, a refugee, and we took refuge in Great Americana, you know, and you know, and so on. And
Spend.
yeah, and so actually, yeah, and so it reframed why I'm so attracted to this community or this way of living, because it's not based on material things.
Right.
You know, so that in the context of climate change is exactly the resistance, the changing culture, you see? So because of this, attending this and having to be part of this panel to share my personal story and why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I chose this path, and why I'm at the conference for bringing this perspective of this way of life, which is the monastic life, to kind of like find an alternative to the material, but to touch the spiritual, and to remind people that they have that. Where does that fit in the space
and it's
of?
Easy to connect to that mycelial mat. You just put your little leg down, and the mycelial mat is there, and you can touch that.
People know they've been there. If they've suffered, and they've actually stayed with their suffering, they know what it feels like. And it's because when we are not in touch with that and remember the vulnerable moments that we've had, when we forget that, we are actually very proud and very, you know, kind of forceful. And it's tense, you know. And there's a cost to that. And that is our culture. Yeah. We praise that. We idolize people who succeed on that level.
She's tough. She is not taking a no for an answer.
Oh, you see
well, it seems like that could be a path, because there's, you know, we're seeing it play out with the agreement. Not enough, it's something, you know, and people are going to have really hard views on, you know, cop out, better than nothing. And that plays out all the time, everywhere. And so how...
In your own family it happens.
Oh, yeah, and worse. And so how do we... People are going to have their views, but how do we find that way to let both things be true and move forward?
Yeah. And that's what, for me, what this practice does is if this is blocked, I find another way. So for me, the practice is like when I'm blocked, and I find another nourishment, and I find different ways, you know. And for me, it's very important to have other sources that I'm being nourished with, and other causes that are all going the same way, but maybe not there yet. The door is not open. But some of us might be in the position, in the scope of our involvement is there, and maybe it is for you to do something firm and harsh, you know, but you do it together as a community. So when you do fall out, when you get burnt out, you have other brothers and sisters and other members who take over. So that's why community is so important. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not always at my best, but I don't always have to be in
You
the
don't
front
have to
line.
be. Yeah,
You
right.
see? So we take turns. That's why it's so crucial now to move from movement to settlement. And I don't know if that makes sense, but movements go by, but there's nothing settling to actually model ways of working that is resilient, sustainable, and represent what we want. You see?
Right.
So we're not just asking for them to give us, but we are modeling ourselves with whatever we have. You see what Ty is envisioning in terms of community?
Yeah.
You know, and this is for us. So, yeah, there's we can't stop everyone from fossil fuel right now. So there's definitely some transition needed. You know, there's no...
We can want to, but it doesn't have to stop forward.
Yeah, there's
movement
right
to
now,
do.
if you stop all
Yeah.
fossil fuel consumption, it would be like chaos. So, you know, that fact helps me.
Yeah.
You know, I know it's not, we need to go where they're pumping oil, where they're making coal. We need to do that and confront that and face it, but do it as a community so you're sustainable, resilient. That's what I mean by settlement. Because movements, you come together for one event or one protest.
And blocking isn't enough.
And then you go back to loneliness.
Yeah.
You see? You need a settlement. You need a community. And I feel that that's happening. People are beginning to with XR, we got to peek into some of that. The culture of caring for each other, caring for the activists. And we hope that grows, like mycelial, it continues to know its weakness and move. That's what's beautiful about that fungal world, is that wherever it's toxic, they get harmed at first, but they reinvent themselves. And they learn how to even digest the toxin. I mean, it's incredible. We have so much to learn.
I want to be a mushroom.
Yeah, how to deal with anger, how to digest and then move it into compassion. That's exactly what mycelial do with toxins. They actually let their membrane get permeated by the toxin and get harmed by it, and the others one are
Transform.
like learning. Isn't that amazing? I mean, it's like it's the most ancient of all organisms, but it's like it's got so much to teach, and that's exactly Buddhism. How to handle suffering and let it be the fuel of your love, of your action, because there's no other way.
And the articulating of the vision. So, there's a book that's called No is Not Enough. So we have to say no the best we can, but then what are we saying yes to? That's another thing we talk about.
Beautiful.
So articulating the vision, being the vision, going down that road and making it clear, it's not just no, it's this instead. And I think that's an important role that certainly the community plays. You're the living dharma of this instead, of how to be.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
And so the more we can do that for each other, then people aren't so afraid to let go of what they know and think about a new way things can be.
That's right.
And that's how we can
to
change.
hold both. Yeah, that's beautiful. To not be dualistic.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm going to read you a poem.
Yeah.
And then make sure that this is a moment to express my gratitude for you and for Ron.
Okay.
Yeah, just to
That's
know
beautiful.
how much, this is a moment. And I wanted to, have you this poem. I want to read it to you. If it's okay with everyone. Here we go. Blessing for Sound. From The Bell and the Blackbird by David White. I thank you for the smallest sound, for the way my ears open, even before my eyes, as if to remember the way everything began, with an original vibrant note. And I thank you for this everyday original music, always being rehearsed, always being played, always being remembered as something new and arriving a tram line below the city street. Gull cries or a ship's horn in the distant harbor, so that in the waking I hear voices even where there is no voice, and invitations where there is no invitation, so that I can wake with you by the ocean in the summer or in the deepest, seemingly quietest winter, and be with you so that I can hear you even with my eyes closed, even with my heart closed, even before I fully wake. Blessing for the light. I thank you, light, again, for helping me to find the outline of my daughter's face. I thank you, light, for the subtle ways your merest touch gives me shape to such things I could only learn to love through your delicate instruction. I thank you this morning, waking again, most intimately and secretly, for your visible invisibility, the way you make me look at the face of the world, so that everything becomes an eye to everything else, and so that, strangely, I also see myself being seen, so that I can be born again in that sight, so that I can have this one other way, along with every other way, to know that I am here. It's a tribute to sound and to light. Isn't it beautiful? That came my way on our trip. It's like we should put that into chanting. It has the reverence.
Mm-hmm.
You feel that?
The bird liked it too.
Yeah, you heard it? Woo! Yeah, this is a golden light.
There's lots of problems, but there's lots of options.